And he sent it to somebody he knew who happened to be on tour with Wu, and DJ Scratch played it for the RZA.
Wow.
And he called me a few months later and was just like, "Are we doing this?" And I said, "Hell yeah."
Hey everyone, welcome to the Sonically podcast where music creators educate music creators. I'm Elmo. In today's episode, we are excited to sit down with the Black Lotus, the Grammy-nominated R&B singer, songwriter, and producer, also known as Andreena Mill. Known for her powerful vocals, raw lyricism, and genre-blending sound, the Black Lotus has made waves both as a solo artist and as a sought-after songwriter for major acts like Drake, French Montana, and Kodak Black. She is gearing up for the release of her highly anticipated Wu-Tang inspired project, Honey, the Black Lotus Meets the Killa Bees, dropping this fall under 36 Chambers. And in this project, she puts her unique R&B spin on classic Wu-Tang records, sampling and reinterpreting the original tracks in a way only she can. Today, we'll explore her journey from the Toronto music scene to Grammy nominations, the creative process behind her new project, and the inspiration driving her work. So without further ado, let's welcome the incredible, the Black Lotus, to the show.
Yay.
Hello.
That was a nice introduction. Okay, Elmo.
Had to
So
do it.
happy
Had
to
to
be
do it.
here.
You know, we're just so happy and excited to have you on.
Excited to
We're
be there.
super stoked about your project. We're super stoked about the work that you've done, and really, we just want to get to know you better and just hear some of the story behind the amazing music. So I'm wondering if we could sort of rewind back to the beginning.
Mhm.
Did you grow up with music in your life?
I absolutely did. My mom was like a huge R&B lover, and my dad was the same. But my dad was actually he still is in a reggae band. And growing up, he would have rehearsals at our house in the basement every Wednesday. And my dad's band has backed artists like Shabba Ranks and Dennis Brown and Barrington Levy. He's so growing up with that and seeing these like musicians come to the house as a kid, it was always like, who's I didn't really know who these people were because I was so young, but I would hear them going off in the basement on the mic, and I think that's what triggered my love for music and just like the energy that it exuded, through these walls. So I started digging with his equipment, and that's kind of how it started.
That's amazing. So was he very much a big part of discovering the creative side of music?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was around 10 or 11, like my parents knew I could sing, but I was very shy. I liked to rap more than
Mhm.
anything else. And he would say, why don't you try songwriting? Like, just write some songs that you can sing. And from there, because I was always doing poetry, it just kind of came to me that I would start singing. And my mom and my dad were very much supportive of that. They got me into piano lessons, they got me into vocal lessons, and really helped me hone my craft at a very young age. So, you know, um, they saw it and they
Mm.
allowed me to grow.
So you listed off reggae is sort of like your initial influence because of your dad.
Yeah,
Were
yeah.
there any other sonics playing in the house that you feel you absorbed that sort of kind of transitioned or transferred into the stuff that you created?
A lot of rock, a lot of R&B. Mainly, I feel like my mom was a huge music fan, so she played music all day, every day. So we were listening to like Bobby Brown, Whitney Houston, Michael Jackson, like all that kind of music growing up. But then there was, I mean, growing up in Canada, as there was a huge wave of rock music. So on the radio, that's a lot of the music I heard, like growing up and being inspired, listening to like Sum 41 and Avril Lavigne and Radiohead and like that. So all of these things just kind of meshed into my brain
Hmm.
as to now my musical inspirations for like everything I do and how I approach things, trying not to be just sticking to one genre.
Yeah, that must give you a huge sort of leg up when you're behind the microphone or like top lining or doing
Yeah.
things in the creative space where you can like pull from these different references
Yeah.
of sort of this diverse music palette that you have.
Yeah, absolutely. I think being so like just in it for a very long time with having the inspiration from my parents, but then also just growing up in Toronto and having these inspirations from different places and different people, it allowed me to really look at certain types of music and find, okay, well, what makes this that? What makes this? And I can apply it to, other sounds. So I love it. I love genre bending,
Mhm.
especially now. It's kind of the wave now where nothing is just one thing.
Absolutely. And you've been in the game for a minute, coming from Canada, coming from Toronto, just huge accomplishments on your end in terms of, some of the records that you've been on, and then winning awards and just kind of staying in it and growing with it and accomplishing
Right.
so many things. The next question I have is, what were some of the biggest challenges you faced in your career as a singer, songwriter, R&B artist,
Mhm.
and how have you overcome them?
I feel like the bigger challenges started when I was really young because my father was more in the reggae industry. He didn't really understand the R&B side, and I think also, Toronto was still very much in the baby stages of the music, you know what I mean? And like there were artists like Cardinal and Socrates and Julie Black and like Melanie Duran and these people who Tamia, Deborah Cox, like the list goes on. But everybody kind of was just in their own bubble. It wasn't really like a Toronto wave. So I feel like when it came down for me, the biggest challenges were just finding my tribe, finding my sound. And because I was so young, I was being navigated by people who still didn't really know where the industry was going. So I think the biggest challenge for me was as I got older was understanding my sense of independence and what my sound really was supposed to be. I think because of my musical influences, people didn't understand this girl who wanted to rap but then wanted to do rock and hip hop and all of these things at that time, that it was just like, just do R&B. So I was like, okay, I'll do R&B. But that's not really where my heart just lives. So
Mm,
I feel like now, being older and wiser, and because the industry's changed so much, especially in Toronto, um, I've taken upon myself to really dive into the essence of like who I am. And that was really the reason for the name change as well with the Black
mm,
Lotus from Andreena Mill, because Andreena Mill was just people looking at me, this is who you are. It wasn't really, hey guys, this is who I am,
mm.
So yeah, it was definitely a challenge finding myself.
You mentioned Cardinal Official and
Yeah.
Socrates, and I remember back in those days, because Canada was trying to find its music identity in a lot of ways, especially in the urban music scene. Like,
Yeah.
I felt like a lot of what was happening in New York was kind of like the reference for the Toronto sound,
The
but
Toronto
then
sound. Absolutely.
yeah, but
Absolutely.
then there was like the track that Cardinal came out with that was like Old Time Killin', and that one
Yep.
just kind of broke things open. Like, whoa, like Toronto can actually sort of, um, this is something different in comparison to that. So,
Right.
just from your lens and your perspective, how would you compare the Canadian music scene between then and now? Like, how has it evolved over the years in your eyes?
I feel like it's evolved in a way where there is, I feel like, and Cardi was a great example, and I feel like Socrates as well. But Cardi with Bacardi slang, and then we had the Northern touch, and like people were no longer afraid of being Canadian, and no longer afraid of saying like this is our style of music. Cardi came with the West Indian influence and really like pushed that to the forefront. And I feel like once people started to see like, oh, this is unapologetically Toronto or Canada, it just kind of shifted for everybody in the industry. I know that Sox has a heavy soul and like funk influence in his music, and I think that really started to shine through when he was doing things for himself and doing things for Julie Black. And I feel like also other forms of media, like Little X, the director, having music videos coming to Toronto, and people always wanted to shoot in Toronto, really started to shine a light on the art and the talent in not just the city but the country. And I think that's when people started to really develop their own sounds and, no longer be afraid to sound like a city on its own rather than emulating what New York was doing or emulating what, other places were doing. Yeah.
100%. Yeah, and I would say that you are also a contributor to that. Just being
Right.
sort of somebody who was a part of projects of people that really broke things open. And I'm obviously talking about Drake. And
Yeah.
you were involved with the hit Closer. That was like sort of like the initial sort of bubble up sort of mixtape that really
Yeah.
got eyes on sort of what was happening out on the east coast of Canada. This song also is an interpolation of Guapale's song Closer. Um,
Yeah.
and they say deep, meaningful creation stays with us for a lifetime. Can you take us behind the scenes of that collaboration, how the song came together, what it was like working with Drake, and then sort of like
Yeah.
just how you felt, how you saw sort of these little moments kind of open things up even further for the Canadian music scene?
Well, when it came down to, I guess, at one point, really just starting to find my identity as an artist, I started working with Socrates mainly. He was my mentor for a very long time, and he introduced me to Boy Wonder, who we started, collaborating and working with. And then I then end up bumping into Aubrey at this restaurant called Avocado. And he knew who I was. I didn't know who he was because I didn't really watch TV. And I knew he was on Degrassi at the time. But, we hit it off and became really good friends. And we just kind of like, I felt like we were on the same wave when it came to our approach for music, the vibe, and how we were really intense when it came to our craft. So he was working on Room for Improvement at the time, and we were kind of just vibing in the studio, and he was telling me about this comeback season album and this idea for Closer. And I was like, okay, cool, let's, like, we'll do it one day, but kind of pushed it to the side. And then a few months later, he calls me at 3 o'clock in the morning and was like, hey, can you come down to the studio? I want you to do this Closer record. And I'm like, bro, it's 3 a.m. I get to the studio. I bring my 3 month old daughter, and we did Closer to My Dreams, and we did Last Hope, which is a record produced by Rich Kid featuring Cardinal Official, all on the same night.
Mm.
And I just remember being in the studio that night, and the energy was different. Like, we started to feel a shift. It was like something's different about these records. And when comeback season came out, it was like, yeah, it's about to be a whole nother ball game for the city. But I think it was because everybody just felt this energy, like even Cardi in the room, him already being at a certain point of his career, but being there with us, with Rich Kid and Drake and myself and 40, and just knowing that like there's something special about this whole comeback season project that's gonna change the soundscape for the city. And it did. And I'm happy to be a part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Like what a great moment. Like were you also like in talking about this record, um
Mhm.
were you also a fan of Guapale and sort of
Yeah.
just that sound that she kind of like came up with
Oh
from
yeah.
the Bay Area?
Absolutely. I feel like when he had mentioned that song in the beginning, it was something that I was already listening to, because I felt like, especially as a young woman and as a young mother, I still dealt with the struggles of, like, trying to be an artist and then people kind of turning their back at that time. And Closer to My Dreams just made it was a reminder for me that, like, even though things might seem difficult right now, you can still get to this. You can still do this. And that was the beginning of this of the idea for Last Hope.
Mm.
Like, I gotta make it out and move quickly. Can't allow the test to restrict me. You know what I mean? Like, we went from one record to the next, and it was just thinking about, how do we get out of this mindset, and how do we, stop splitting money for McDonald's?
Mm,
Like, how do
yeah.
we get to the next level? You know what I mean? And that's that's really what it boiled down to. So, I love that record Closer, and it it really kind of opened up something for all of us.
Fast forward like a little bit further, you are in Los Angeles at the moment, and so I guess that's one thing that happened, and the second thing that happened is again like going back to the transition from Andreena Mill to the Black Lotus.
Lotus.
Can you go into that a little bit more in terms of like the name change? Because I feel like Andreena Mill, when those records came out, and you released a lot of records before that under that name, and I think for a really long time that's how we knew you as.
Yeah,
Why the identity change? Why the name change? And how does this new identity reflect your evolution as an artist?
um so I feel like being in the industry since a young child, like started at the age of 11. um it was always, Andreena Miller is my government name. And I just felt that, like, okay, this is what, everybody knows me. This is my name. But there were times in my career where I felt like I was burying aspects of my craft, like wanting to really take my production to the next level, wanting to really rap, wanting to really um, write for other people and do all these other things. But I felt like because I was so young, I was constantly being like, hey, you can only do this, you're only allowed to do this. And I felt like I was put in a box. And around 2015, around 2016, I realized I needed to start living for myself. And this was around the time that, like, my mother was really ill, and we would have these conversations about, living life and living life to the fullest and being true to who you are and not really caring what anybody thinks. So I feel like at that time, I knew it was time for a switch. And the Black Lotus was something that I've always kind of referred to myself as. People would call me Lolo and things like that.
Mhm.
But once I realized that now is the time for me to be the producer I've always wanted to be, sing the songs I've always wanted to sing, touch on subjects I've always wanted to touch on. I couldn't do that as Andreena Mill because
Mhm.
everybody already had a mindset of who I am.
Mhm.
And I felt like I needed to just not throw it, but put it to the side and say, hey guys, this is who I've been. This is the side I've been wanting to show you. I'm older now. I have the freedom to do whatever I want.
Mhm.
So that was mainly the reason for the name change. And the Black Lotus for me was really just, allowing this person who's been buried so deep to finally come to the surface and
Mhm.
show people, like, this is who I really am.
When you would tell, I guess, peers about all of these things kind of buried deep inside of you, what was their reaction? Was it like, oh, I don't know, I think you should just stay in your lane type of reaction, or were there some people that were supportive and some people that were not?
I feel like the at the time when I was, Andreena Mill and really wanting to not necessarily be the Black Lotus, but be what that embodied, like all of those things. It was my management. They didn't
Mm,
want me to do certain things, and like, and I didn't understand why. But my peers, I mean, people that were closer to me in age, like Boy Wonder and T Minus and Drake and Melanie Fiona, and like, they really understood where and who I was because we were all growing up at the same time. I feel like having a mentor like Socrates, love him to death. He knew that at some point there was going to be a time where I would break away, and he supported that. But I think the management and everybody else who were a bit older and were kind of honing my craft since I was young didn't really understand the shift. And I
mm,
think it was because they didn't see the shift coming in the city the way I saw it, because I
mhm,
was very much involved in, who was next and who
mm,
was coming next. I saw it. And so that's kind of where the pushback started. But I had a lot of support. It took some time to get all my ducks in a row, but once it got there, I feel like I'm in a much better space as a creative and on a whole.
Your upcoming project, Honey, the Black
Mhm.
Lotus meets the Killa puts an R&B spin on classic Wu-Tang records. Can you tell us how this idea came to life and what inspired you to reinterpret Wu-Tang's music in this way?
The pandemic. Well, actually, I think it really started from when I did my first project, Ready to Fly. I was interpolating a lot of hip hop records on the first project, and one of them was a Method Man record. And shortly after I had done Ready to Fly, I was going to do another project that was kind of like that, but it ended up being a full album.
Mhm,
So around the pandemic, I started to go back to records that I had actually done years ago that were hip hop interpolated, and majority of them happened to be Wu-Tang records, and I love Wu-Tang.
Mm.
I'm like a genuine hip hop fan as a rapper before anything else, and like, it was just something for me to do during the pandemic. I just wanted to be creative and wanted to fall in love with music again. I think, obviously a lot of things got really dark and people couldn't go anywhere, and I wanted to just be creative. So
Mm.
my partner and I were just messing around and just started vibing, and we started coming up with these ideas, and it ended up becoming an album in a very short span of time that I was ready to just put on SoundCloud.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who who's actually a really dope producer, Nitty. He's worked with Biggie Smalls and Big Pun, and like, we were just talking about it. He was like, "Oh, well, send me the project," and I sent it to him, and he sent it to somebody he knew who happened to be on tour with Wu and DJ Scratch, and DJ Scratch played it for the RZA.
Wow.
And he called me a few months later and was just like, "Are we doing this?" And I said, "Hell yeah."
Yeah.
So, it was never anything that I felt like I'm doing this to just for any reason. I just wanted to do something that was creative and fun, and maybe somebody else who loves hip hop as much as I did would enjoy this, because it's kind of like a female interpolation of songs, in a different way.
Mm.
So that was really just my mindset for it.
You use the word interpolation, and
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who might be just be getting into the game who might not understand what that is and how that sort
Yeah.
of is something that's used to spark creativity. Can you
Yes.
kind of like explain a little bit what that is?
Yeah. So the interpolation is really, you find a piece of music, and sometimes it's sampling this song and making it something new, or sometimes it's taking this song and making it your version of that song. So some of these songs are sampled or samples the Wu-Tang songs, and some of these songs are actually my standpoint on what these records are. Like, for example, there's a record on the album called Thug Cry, which to me was a response to Impossible off the Wu-Tang Forever album. So there is certain ways that we went about this project, where it was like, this is how y'all inspired me. This is what grew from that. So that's why it's Black Lotus means to kill the bees.
Gotcha, gotcha. So, yeah, and thank you for explaining that. On one of the records, I did hear the throwback of the classic Mary J part, "You're All I Need," and you talk about sort of like the reinterpolation of that. So when
Yeah.
you heard that, that being such a monumental, melodic, lyrical moment from back in the day, where were you at
Mhm.
in terms of your headspace? Like, okay, I'm gonna use this part and like create something new from that, but I want to integrate my own life and my own experiences, my own perspectives into this. How did you flip it?
Well, that song is Real Talk. It was actually the first song that set it off for the whole project. But for me, the first time I ever saw the Method Man and Mary record, that was like the hardest love song. Like, it
Mm,
doesn't get any harder than that as a love song. It doesn't really feel like it, but it really is. And for me, it was kind of like, okay, I really want to do what would have been the female response, even though, Mary did sing her parts and things like that. If this was, a response, what would it be? What would this woman say? What would her version of it be? And I think for me, that was kind of like, okay, I want to do something that is a hard love song. Sometimes love songs are very sweet and soft, and I'm like, nah, 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 it needs
mm.
to hit. So that was kind of my mindset walking into doing Real Talk, which drops on Friday. Um, but yeah, that was really my mindset when it came down to it. I think the approach of the original was how I wanted to keep the approach of my version of it.
Gotcha.
So yeah.
Did you feel any pressure to do
Oh God, yes.
the original's justice? I mean, I could just imagine you like the
Oh
moment
God.
before like RZA hears it or something like that. Were you nervous?
I mean, yes, because in my mind, this was literally, I was just going to do this for my own mental sanity, just to be like, I want to just make something. I love Wu. Let me create something. And then when it got into the RZA's hands, it then became like, oh snap, is he going to yell at me? Is he going to hate this? Like, I didn't know. And he was so kind when he called me, and it was just, it made me realize that like I wasn't crazy, but
Mm,
also he really saw what I was trying to do, and also understood that like you guys really inspired a generation of people, and
mm,
you're seeing this firsthand. Like, it wasn't just something where I just threw a bunch of songs together. Like, we took our time, and I think he understood that and appreciated it, and knew that it needed a, more ears. And I totally appreciate 36 Chambers for wanting to put that to the forefront, and not me just put it on SoundCloud and, and leave
mm,
it there. But yeah,
absolutely.
definitely pressure. I think once he heard the first few records, I was more confident to send him the rest.
Mm.
So
So good. Well,
yeah,
we're definitely looking forward to that, the drop, and just seeing
yeah,
where it goes, and seeing the reactions from all the Wu-Tang fans and all the Black Lotus
yes.
fans, and seeing
I'm part of
just
the
like,
Killer Bee Army.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. We're so excited for you. Um, and yeah, number one, and also we're just very thankful that you're on the show today, sharing your wisdom and knowledge with our audience. And um, we know that you're an advocate for the next generation of music creators,
Mhm.
for aspiring songwriters and artists who look up to you. What
Mhm.
advice would you give them?
Advice for upcoming artists and songwriters: I feel like staying true to yourself. I think that is the most important part. Don't be afraid to take advice, find a mentor, learn from other people, study, listen to different types of music, focus on what makes a great written song a great written song. But stay true to who you are. Don't try to, copy or emulate. You could be inspired, but from that inspiration, what does that build in you? I think some people are afraid in the beginning, or just wanting to learn in the beginning how to like make a song or write a song. So, we mimic, we figure out, okay, well, how did she do that? I'm going to do that too. But don't let that become your template for everything you do. So just experiment, talk to other musicians who are up and coming. Oh my goodness, your peers are like the biggest tool you will ever have. People who are in close proximity. I think when people are coming up, they try to find, well, who's the big guy around that I can talk to? No, talk to the person who's, in maybe class beside you, um, trying to, learn to play the bass or learn to play guitar. You guys vibe together. Just stick close to your close community.
I think that's going to go a long way for a lot of people. Yeah, we just want to thank you again for sharing. At this
Mhm.
point, we're moving on to the rapid fire round, and
Oh
these
Lord.
are just some quick questions that we ask everybody. They're very music creator crafted, and yeah, and at the end, the last question again will be to promote anything that you have going on, whether it's shows or obviously the new album coming out. So, yeah, if that's okay with you, can we get into it?
Yes.
All right. So, rapid fire round. Question number one: what DAW do you use and why?
I use Pro Tools because I've been living with Pro Tools since the beginning. And I also use FL Studio. Those are definitely my two go-tos for sure.
Beautiful. Favorite plugins?
Ooh, I like the Valhalla for like reverbs, anything that's like Manny Marroquin. And then also Safari pedals. They have some really cool reverbs, delays. I like to play with those a lot. Compression, I like Soothe. And man, I could go on for days. I'm an engineer.
Oh,
But yeah, yeah.
what is a
Yeah.
sound that always brings you joy?
Wind chimes. I don't know why.
It's a good one. I like
Yeah,
that.
wind chimes.
How would you rank your music creator skill sets out of 10 for the following? Beat making.
I'm gonna give myself a 7 because I'm never satisfied.
Lyric writing.
There's always room for improvement, but I'm confident where I am right now. I'm gonna say 9.
Sound design.
I'm gonna say 8 because I love to sound design. Yeah, but I'm still learning. Still learning.
Mixing.
I probably give myself a 10. I do it on a daily.
Love it.
I'd say 10.
Love the confidence. We don't
I
get
do.
a lot of tens, honestly, for that one.
I'm gonna say, well, I mean, I'm not at like a Jason Joshua like level when it comes to mixing, but I know I
You
could
know your
throw a
stuff.
mix down.
Mm.
I do.
Now I know who to call. Top lining.
I'm gonna say like a 8 because I feel like I'm confident in it. I know I've definitely grown. Definitely confident in that.
Music theory.
Music theory. I know music pretty well. I went to an art school, so I played piano, classically trained. So I'm only gonna give myself an 8 because I know my teacher, Miss Young, was upset that I used to wear long nails to piano class. So yeah,
Shout out Miss Young.
Miss Young.
Arranging.
I love arrangements. You know, I come from a DJ background at times, so I love arranging. It's hard to give a level between 1 and 10 on arrangement because it's kind of by feel in
Hmm.
vibe, but
Yeah.
I feel like I know how to vibe. Maybe an 8.
What is your reaction or facial expression when you know you've made some heat?
It's probably, I don't know. It's kind of like a
Oh, there it is. There it is.
it's one of those. It's the what's that smell? It's one of those ones. It's the stank face.
It's like a smirky stank face.
Yes, the stank face.
How do you stay sharp lyrically and melodically?
I try to write, brainstorm every day. I sit down, and this is maybe somebody watching. This is something that's a technique that I learned online, and it's you just for 1 minute you find one word and you just brainstorm any and everything around that one word. It could be like donuts, and then you just start writing everything, and that kind of helps my mind flow. So whenever I'm in a session and we have a subject, the ideas just keep flowing. For me,
Mm,
lyrically, that helps to keep my mind sharp. Um, Melodically, I try to just go based on the feeling. And some people, I'll be in sessions, they say, "Are you on that frequency?" And just staying within the frequency of the energy of the song helps me
mm,
craft my melodies. So instead of forcing it to be like, "Oh, it's got to sound like this or it's got to sound like that," it's like, no, what is the song giving me? What is
mm,
it telling me? That's what helps me stay melodically sharp because I'm not trying to confine to one sound structure. I'm
mhm.
trying to find what the song is trying to tell me. So
Wow.
those are the two things I try to, stay on top of when I'm creating.
What do you understand now about the music business that you didn't understand when you first started?
That it's a business. I started off really young, thinking everything was going to be like, the number one records and the plaques and the tours. And, you're young and you're deer eyed. But as I got older, I started to understand the business of it. And as I understood the business changed.
Mm,
I remember buying CDs and now it's streams. So I've realized that in order to be in this business, you have to keep learning about this business. It's not just a like, okay, you know everything, now go. It's no, it's an ever changing thing. It's an ever changing thing. So
mm.
yeah, that's I think the biggest thing I've learned. It never stays the same.
If AI technology was somehow able to take over our jobs as music creators, what new career path would you choose?
The AI question. Oh my God. Like so many of like people that I work with, we have this conversation about AI all the time about, the making beats for us now and writing
Mhm,
songs and singing them. Um, I feel like I come from a tech background and I feel like I would still be part of this world of music, But if AI made it where I didn't have to sing, dance, record, or do anything, I would just script it all. I would
Mm,
be the label, or really just delve into AI more if it's a situation where
hmm.
it completely took over. Or maybe I do something else. I don't know. I have a restaurant, cook some food. I like to cook.
Oh, what's your best dish?
I don't know. I don't know. I like to make anything. I don't know. I can kind of cook anything. It's weird, but
Really?
yeah, I think I'm really good when it comes to vegan and vegetarian food because
Hmm.
I was a vegan for a very long time. I do, eat not everything, but eat meat now. But I think at that during that time of my life, I had to be very experimental. So anything that has to do with vegetables, I think I can make kind of crazy. You know,
Sounds like
yeah,
a good
might not
restaurant.
sound that great.
S-
Yeah,
If it happens, knock on wood that it doesn't. My take on it is that uh, there will be always a need to create for people, and there will always be
yes,
an
yes,
appreciation for uh, things that are created by humans. So even if
absolutely.
there is that lane of AI, music or whatever, I think there will still be a place for us humans, us lowly humans, to
Yeah,
create. But
yeah.
um,
Yeah, I don't
yeah.
think AI can replace us at all. I don't think AI could replace the human experience.
Hmm.
Songs that are written by humans from a human perspective, I don't think AI could ever replicate. It might be able to copy the melodies, beats, patterns, whatever, but not the sentiment of
Hmm.
certain songs.
The emotion
You
and the
know?
stories.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
We're at our last question, Lolo, and I
Yay!
had such a awesome time talking to you.
You
Um,
too, man.
yeah, the last question is all about you. What's next for the Black Lotus? Anything you want to promote to the Sonically community?
Um, Real talk. The video and the single will be out this Friday, September 20th. So I'm really excited about that. The album Honey will be coming out in a couple of months. We don't have an exact date yet, but it's on the way. The follow up single will be out in October. Yeah, and after that, just like, people look out for shows that are going to come along with it, the visuals that'll come along with it, and, everything else after. But I'm really excited, and I hope that people you know, understand that I didn't come to destroy the Wu-Tang Clan's legacy.
Oh, no
I
way.
just wanted to make music, man.
Impossible.
I just wanted to make music.
I think
Yeah,
everyone's gonna love it, and I'm
I hope so.
stoked to
I am.
hear all of the new ideas on top of those classics. And yeah, and just I really appreciate you. I really appreciate your creativity.
Thank you.
I really appreciate your story, and we are very much rooting for you here, and we'll continue to root for you as you continue along your journey. Um,
Thank you.
yeah, so um, if there's anything you need actually from us, or if there's anything that we could do to um, be there for you in any way, we'd love to do that.
I appreciate it. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me and allow me to tell my story and also to share you know, what I'm working on. And as a fellow Canadian, you already know what
Yeah,
it's like,
I know what it is.
trying to break through, the walls that have kind of been put up for us for a very long time. And yeah, I appreciate, you guys expanding and sharing your outlet. So kudos to you
Thank you.
guys.